You're listening to the Pink Tax Podcast, where being a woman costs more and we've got the receipts. From overpriced razors to underpaid roles, we're talking money, power, and the price of showing up. Let's get into it. Welcome to this week's episode of the Pink Tax Podcast. This week, I am joined by an incredible guest, Robynn Storey, who is the CEO and founder of Storyline Resumes, a pioneering resume firm focused on advancing clients' careers. With over 25 years of visionary leadership, Robynn has developed an innovative resume writing philosophy. Together with her team of professionals, she crafts unique, story-driven executive resumes, cover letters, and LinkedIn profiles that highlight each client's distinct strengths, skills, and value propositions. Thank you so much for joining me today, Robynn.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
I'm so excited for this conversation because I live in Canada. I know you're in the States, but I feel like in the past number of years, the job market has been up and down like a yo-yo. So I feel like that is something that a lot of people are maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed with right now. And so I would love to actually hear from you first. What made you create this company? How did you get involved in creating a company that focuses on resumes?
It's actually kind of a funny story. So I worked in corporate America. I was in my late 20s and I had a child. Her name is Alexa. She actually works for the company now. But anyway, when she was little, she was in kindergarten. I used to get her out of bed on cold winter mornings at 4 a.m. and drop her off at my mom and dad so they could get her ready for school or take her to school so I could go to work. I worked in like an hour and a half away from home. So after a few years of doing this, I just said, you know what? I hit a wall here. I don't want to do this job anymore. I don't want to travel. I don't want to be away from my kid. I just, I want to be at home. I want to consult. I want to do something of my own. So it started off, I went to my husband and I said, hey, I really want to quit my job. I was like the breadwinner at the time. He was just finishing his CPA and I had a really good job, well-paying job. And because we both grew up poor, which makes things easier, he said to me, here's the deal. If you can find something to do to make enough money to pay for groceries every week, I can float us for a year until you figure out what you want to do. And I said, immediately, I agreed. So I gave up my 6-figure job and I became a waitress. So I worked on my business during the day. And when he came home from work, I went and waited tables at night. And it started off because people were asking me for help with like HR related things, some marketing related things. And then someone asked me to write them a resume. I had a background in HR and I did. And he ended up with this phenomenal engineering job. And then he kept sending me his friends. And so I would sit down with them. I would invite them over to my house and sit at the kitchen table and interview them. And that's kind of how it started. I wasn't even charging at the time. And my husband, I think I mentioned this earlier to you, the corporate controller,
Yeah.
He said, you need to be charging. So I started charging off $50. And, here we are 25 years later. We're a $10 million a year company. I have 70 USA based staff. And my goal, your goal really, you never start off saying, I'm going to make money. Your goal is to create something or something that you love and go to work every day and have a passion for it. And my passion was really creating an environment where I could hire people and they could do the same thing that I was doing. They could be home with their kids, get an on and off the school bus, be there at night. And along the way, we've helped a lot of people, find themselves, tell their career stories, and get better jobs.
That's amazing. And how visionary for the time. Like, obviously, that was pre people doing remote work as like a regular thing that we see a lot of companies offering. So what an incredible opportunity to give.
There was no such thing back then. And, I am a huge fan of work from home because I think it brings the balance that Americans are sorely missing in their lives. We're so driven by our careers and it sort of, owns your life. Have you ever seen that TikTok video of the young girl that graduated college and she was going to school, or she had graduated from school in New York City and she was living and working in New York City. And after 2 weeks of her new job, she sat and cried and videotaped herself and put it on TikTok about how she cannot believe this is going to be her life for the next 50 years. And every time I see that, I think that's exactly how I felt. Like I'm trapped in this prison that we call work and I don't want to be. And, we help people kind of find their way out of that.
That's incredible. And, I've seen lots of studies out there that show like especially when you have like a large commute, like you mentioned that you did,
Yeah.
you actually need to be compensated like over 40% more to have like the same happiness level as someone who is has a 10-minute commute into the office. So I think we really underestimate what that means, giving people back extra time in their day to spend with the people that they love.
It's so true. It is true because when you, there was a girl on LinkedIn that posted something. Oh, I shouldn't call her a girl. A woman that posted something this week. How she's a CEO and she was showing her 5 to 9 after her 9 to 5, and she had two little girls, and she spent on average with them about 35 minutes a night. One was an infant, one was a toddler. Their bedtimes were fairly early, and people were asking her and saying, how do you feel about that? You spend about 35 minutes a day with your kids. And she said, well, I'm up early, and, I spend time with them in the morning, and, then I go to work. But then after she puts them to bed at 7 or 8 o'clock, she does a deep dive from 8 to 11. And I just watched that and I thought, you know, you either have to really love what you're doing or have such a passion for your job. And I don't think that people feel like that so much anymore.
I would agree with you there. I think a lot of people feel like that they have to do these things to kind of make ends meet or to be successful in their corporate career. But, at the end of the day, I'm not sure if you've read the book, The Top Five Regrets of Dying. I don't think anybody is on their deathbed being like, wow, I wish I had worked more hours.
It's so true. It's so true. I'm so fascinated with all of these people on social media that are sort of like going off the grid. They're quitting their corporate
Yeah.
jobs. They're buying a piece of land. They're raising chickens. There's nothing simple about raising chickens,
No.
or cleaning up after chickens, or milking cows. But there's some sort of romanticism to the idea that you're not beholden to this environment that we've been programmed to believe that is the only option for us. And as women, I often feel like we've sort of been sold a bill of goods. Everyone
100%.
said that you can have it all. I mean, lean into it. They said having it all is great, but having it all also comes with exhaustion, a lot of guilt, a lot of anxiety, a lot of you're torn between, like, I'm at work, I want to be with my kids. I'm with my kids. I should be at work. So I think there is a lot to be said about women and what we have to do to kind of find the balance that is right for us. And I think that looks different for every single person.
Absolutely. It's not like a one size fits all for what it looks like to be a mom and be in the corporate world. And that actually leads into kind of my next question for you. So I wrote the book, The Pink Tax, and we know that the pink tax is the price difference for products that are marketed towards women. But I want to know, in the executive job market, do you see kind of like a professional equivalent of that? So are there extra efforts or costs that women have to bear to achieve the same results as their male counterparts?
Well, I mean, from a resume writing perspective, when we are working with a client, it's the same. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Now, the answer to that question is wildly different once you get into the interview and the offer phase. Women historically get offered less money. Women historically get offered less benefits, less perks, less time. Women historically are sort of viewed like, especially if they're married and they have children, how much time is this person going to need off? We're a high energy team, we're an all hands on deck kind of situation here. Are there going to be times when this person has to leave early? Or, everybody sort of, and I'm not saying it's true in every case, but women are the go-to. If the kid gets sick at school, they're calling you first. So I do believe that companies sort of weigh all of those things when they are looking at women, whether, it is a really sort of high demand role, and there might be extenuating circumstances or situations that keep you from getting that job because you are a woman. Everyone knows that happens. So the answer is yes. I do believe that happens quite often, and everybody knows about the difference in salary. I could tell you stories from now until the cows come home, but we had a client recently who's an attorney, and she works at a firm, and she was making a full $100,000 less than her male peers. She only found
Jesus.
out, this is actually pretty funny. She only found out because the HR person accidentally copied her on a memo about salaries, and hers was listed up against 4 of her male peers. And when she came to us first for resume services, she's like, I got to get the hell out of here. Look what they're doing to me. And I ended up talking to her on the phone, and I said, here's what I would do if I were you. I would email your boss and say, I'm sure this was an oversight, but it's recently come to light that I make $100,000 less in annual salary than my four male. You know, and by the end of the day, if you could let me know how we're going to rectify this situation, I would greatly appreciate it. Well, he came to her with an overture and apology, and they did rectify it. She still left because that pissed her off and made her
Yeah.
think like, okay, this is how they look at me. But she didn't confront them in a way that I think a lot of people would. She just said, I'm sure this was a mistake. And they did give her the difference. But that happens more often than we know.
Oh yeah, I mean, not to the same extent, but when I was in the corporate world, I found out I was making, at that point, I think it was like $13,000 less, but that was like 25% of my salary.
And doing
Um,
the same job.
I was training the guy, actually.
And we see that also in a situation where women are in a position and then they hire in someone, say in a similar or lateral position, and the new person makes more than the existing staff. That can be a conversation for
Yep,
another day. But I do find that women often find themselves at the low end of that stick as well, where male peers tend to be compensated more equally. And some companies have a policy that if we're hiring in someone new, we make sure that, and we're paying them more for whatever reason, maybe the market bears that, there's a lot of competition, yada, 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 they will increase the salaries of the people that are still in existence in those roles. But that's far and few between.
I love that policy. I have not seen that in my time in the corporate world, but I
I
think,
love that policy well, and it is well, and it is alive in some organizations. And it's all the typical ones that you know of, right? The companies that are really big, the companies that are very transparent about their
yeah,
salary and their bands. So I think that when you're kind of out in the open and you're not trying to hide things, that is definitely a value add that you can bring as a potential employer. And people know that. It's all over
absolutely.
Glassdoor. Just go look at it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I hope people look for that now.
Yes, as
Um,
they should. And you should ask in an interview when you're interviewing for a job. If there are dual positions, these types of positions, say you go to work for a big company and you're an accounting manager, what do the other accounting managers make? What is your policy on, pay equality? Ask those questions. It's okay to ask those questions.
Yeah, no, I think it's really, really important. I want to go back to writing resumes for a second. So, typically, when a woman is maybe writing her resume, she might include less assertive or maybe a more descriptive style word than a man maybe would. So, I'm wondering if you see this in the executives that you work with, and when you're writing those resumes, and what do you think we can actually do about that? In the sense that we want to, and I think this is what your company stands for, is really tell the story about the person that the employer is potentially hiring.
If we have 100 women in a room, and they are all of our resume clients, 98 of them are underselling themselves on their resume. We
Mm,
call that administrating your language. So when we get on the phone with a female, and especially a female executive, we always joke, you're not allowed to give me girl answers. So when we ask you things like, tell me three things you're an expert in, and you say, I'm organized, I'm nice, I'm always on time, we say, no, that's bullshit. We want to know as a leader. So if you're a leader in HR, you're a leader in finance, you're a leader in operations, or whatever the case may be, we want all the really valuable things. This is your style. When you got to this company, where were they struggling? We're looking for innovation, transformation, how you turn things around, how you make things better. So we're constantly telling women we won't accept the answer that they're giving us.
oh, I
And
love
then we
that.
prompt them with the questions. Let's put a metric to this. Well, I went in and I really improved this process. Well, how much money did you save? We want a number. Tell me about the time you saved. We want production. Give me the results. Give me the percentages. We sort of dig, and sometimes women get off the phone with our team and they feel really enthusiastic and optimistic about this process, and sometimes they get off the phone and they're in tears because they've spent their lives underselling their abilities because that's what we've been told to do. Don't be obnoxious. Don't be a bitch.
Right.
Be super friendly. Be a people pleaser. Don't be humble. All of these things have been ingrained in women, and that translates to your resume and then obviously into your career as well.
So, what would be a piece of advice for someone who's maybe listening to this or watching this and rewriting their resume, and they're seeing some of that administrative language that you just mentioned in their resume? Do you have, like, is there
Yes,
something they can
I'll
tell
give you three
themselves?
things. The first thing is that you do not have to describe your job. If you are a salesperson, you're an accountant, you're a healthcare administrator, everybody knows what you do. So you don't have to describe it. Come up with 4 or 5 specific things that you can measure in terms of impact. And it doesn't always have to be dollars. It could be some improvement in productivity. It could be some improvement in hiring. If you're in human resources or recruiting, it'd be time to fill. And put some sort of metric around it. I will tell you that everyone loves dollar symbols. So the more dollar symbols you can put in your resume, I think it's because everybody loves money, the better off you are. So if you can equate an impact that you've had in some way to a cost savings or a cost avoidance or a cost growth, include that in your resume. And then the third thing is leave your humility at the door. Ask yourself these questions. What am I known for at work? What am I really good at? The last time someone complimented me, my boss called me out, I had an annual performance review, I won an award, what was it for? These are the things that you should be including on your resume. And when you kind of follow that guideline, your resume turns from, I'm a really nice person, I'm super organized, and my staff likes me, into, I am a leader who understands and identifies a problem, an obstacle, or challenge, and I go in there and I blow shit up. That's what you want your resume to read like.
I love that. And that was just like 3 incredible things that I think people can absolutely take and have impact on their resumes like literally tomorrow. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I want to know what you think. Maybe if a woman is like coming back into the workforce after she's spent some time away, usually it's for caring for young children, but maybe it could be caring for elders, and parents as well. So women tend to excel in skills like collaboration, mentoring, keeping the team in harmony. And many of these things are seen as soft skills. And I think we also get a lot of those skills from caretaking. How do you translate some of these into those kind of punchier numbers that we were just talking about in what we previously were discussing?
The first thing I tell a woman coming back into the workplace after an extended absence, whether it's 2 years or 10 years, you didn't lose your skills. You didn't lose your education. You didn't lose your intelligence when you decided to stay home with a child, right? Or 2 children or 10 children, or care for your elderly parents. The key is to tell a story. And you want to bridge the gap. Obviously, you want to include any of your previous work history, but any volunteer, any leadership, whether or not you joined the PTA, whether or not you volunteered at your church, whether or not you took a part-time job, you helped at a family business. Not everyone is just taking the care of their kids day in and day out. But if you ran a household, talk about managing the budget. Talk about all of the things that you're good at in this experience, like you would talk about it at a job. So it's okay to say things like, and I always recommend being a little bit funny, being a little bit unique in your resume, where you talk, about corralling kids like you're herding cats, or you're the go-to in the neighborhood for, all things birthday parties because you're super organized, you're very creative, you're whatever. So you can be unique, you can be funny, you can be yourself when you're telling the story, because it is sort of akin to the idea that we do a lot of resumes for retiring NFL football players, which is funny
Oh,
because,
interesting.
you went to college, you went and played football. What are we talking about, right? And we always start off their resume with retiring NFL football player. You know why? Because it's interesting. It's a conversation starter. People want to meet you. Put something in your resume that make people want to meet you. So whether or not that is you, volunteered in an organization and you broke their fundraising records and you created the biggest event they've ever had in their history, that's meaningful to me. That means something to me.
Yeah.
So don't just say I raised kids and changed diapers and blah blah blah. Be effusive. Be proud of your work, and figure out a way to talk about it that is going to mean something to someone.
If you work in accounting, finance, or advisory, you've probably heard the term CBV. It stands for Chartered Business Valuator, the professional designation in Canada for experts who determine what businesses, assets, and investments are really worth. If you want to build stronger judgment, strengthen your analysis, and open doors across the finance world, learning what CBVs do is a great place to start. On that note of getting in front of people and making your resume interesting so that someone will want to call you for an interview, how have you found navigating kind of the AI landscape? I've seen TikToks, and you probably have too, where it's like, I applied for 5,000 jobs over 2 years and I couldn't get past the AI that I submitted the resume to even get an interview.
Well, first of all, if you have applied to 5,000 jobs over 2 years and you never got an interview, after the first 1,000 not getting an interview, you need to change up your strategy. So people get very stuck in their ways in terms of how they're applying for a job. And applying for a job today is a hell of a lot different than applying for a job even was 7, 8, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There is an incredible amount of talent on the market. The competition is fierce. Your resume has to really speak in the language that we've talked about: accomplishment and impact and value and numbers and results and metrics and all of those things that make you look like you're someone that comes in and makes an impact. So in addition to all of those things, people need to really reevaluate their job strategies. There is a statistic out there that is a little bit alarming, because most people sort of default to job boards. 90% of applications received by companies comes through the job board, but accounts for less than 15% of the people that they hire. On the flip
What?
side, about 20% of people that come into an organization and get an interview are referred, and they account for between 50 and 60% of new hires.
That's incredible.
So work that out in your brain. 2 or 3 really solid introductions is going to be incredibly beneficial, more beneficial than applying for 100, 200, 300 jobs online. So kind of keep that in mind when you're creating your strategy about what really works. It feels easy to click easy apply, upload the resume all day long, but it really accounts for very few people getting job offers.
Wow, yeah. I think, you're on LinkedIn and you see like a job and it's like 1,000 people have applied for this job and you're like,
And that's
wow,
okay. You know what? We've had people, clients of ours that saw 1,000 people applied for that job, and they applied anyway, and they got interviewed, and they got that job. If you talk to recruiters on the back end, they might get 1,000 applicants. There might be 12 qualified candidates out of those
oh
applicants.
wow.
Yeah.
So there's lots of just kind of applications that are half done or not the right fit that are just kind of uploading en masse to
We
some
were
of these
hiring a new
companies.
resume writer last year. Our resume writers are, we're a little non-traditional. They're not typically writers by trade. We hire a lot of attorneys. We hire a lot of former executives in the operations space. We hire a lot of college professors, people that know how to write, tell a story, a higher level of intelligence, right? I was getting applications from, helicopter mechanics in Dubai. I mean,
Oh
it was
wow.
like, we said USA based, you have to have at least a bachelor's degree, master's degree preferred, a professional experience. You cannot believe the kind of, I can do this, I can really be a resume writer, I'm great, I'm a good storyteller, blah, 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 blah. If you're not meeting, the basic requirements, or you're not meeting the 5 vetting questions that you're seeing when you're applying for a job, don't waste your time.
Yeah. No, that's a good piece of advice. Okay, I want to know when you're writing resumes. I think some companies have started trying to navigate some of the biases of people's names on resumes. So some companies I know they will take off the name of a resume. Do you ever coach women specifically on language to kind of avoid potentially triggering an unconscious bias of a potential HR person that is reading all of the resumes?
No, I mean, look, I think that this all starts getting into sort of an icky kind of vibe, right? When, I remember back in the 90s and early 2000s, we had a lot of clients that were here on work visas from India. And, they had a traditional Indian name, but when they called on the phone, they said, "Hi, this is John." And I said, "Well, on your resume, it said, well, at work, they told me to call myself John because people couldn't pronounce my name." That to me feels like ick, right? Such kind of a sellout. We live in a global society. There's lots of people from lots of backgrounds and lots of ethnicities and lots of different countries. I think that, the fundamental of confidence and being successful in life is, accepting who you are.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not a fan of saying, let's try to hide the fact that you're a girl or that you're a boy. It's almost like the advice that people give to job seekers over 50 always starts off with look younger. And I say, don't do that. Let's lean into the wisdom. Let's lean into the experience. These are the things that make you valuable. So there is unconscious bias everywhere. But I think once you start getting into that game, you're on a very, very slippery slope about who you are truly as a human being as opposed to who you're trying to be for an employer. And that's hard to sustain. So, not a fan of that.
Yeah, and I think then that too also puts it back on whether it's someone facing ageism or someone facing the fact that they're a woman. It puts it back on them to like fix, and I'm saying that with quotations, like fix themselves as opposed to maybe the company looking at their internal biases or the challenges that maybe their team is facing and having those tough conversations.
Well, we would just went through what I call sort of the DEI era, right? And if we're still doing that, we've got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, I agree. And it has been challenging, I think, in the DE and I space over the past however many months with seeing some of the companies kind of roll back some of those practices. But I think also maybe those are the companies that you aren't necessarily interested in working in then if they're not in
That's
alignment with
absolutely
your.
right. And I think that good companies, look, a lot of times DEI programs and policies and practices are all around optics, right?
Yeah.
Something happened, you want to be out there on the forefront and you want to say, look at us, we're such great diversity employers, blah, 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 blah. Really good employers have always been diversity employers. They're looking for people that, should get opportunities, but they're also creating programs. They're creating outreach. You can't just say, I'm going to go and hire a whole group of sort of underrepresented people to come in and do a job that they don't know how to do. That's not diversity, equity, inclusion,
No.
right? It's creating a pipeline. It's creating opportunities. It's creating women's groups inside the organization. It's creating opportunities at the high school level, at the college level. You've got companies that are going into the community and saying, we want to, in 15 years, hire 50% female engineers. That doesn't happen by magic, right? That happens because they create programs that go into middle schools and tell girls, you can be an engineer. So, these are the organizations that got it going on, and they're not running around talking about DEI as a talking point, right? And those are the ones that you want to go after. Those are the companies that you want to find.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, one of the ways that I found you was actually seeing one of your kind of viral LinkedIn posts holding, I think, companies and interviewers accountable. And I think you've kind of gone a couple of times into the chaos that is like 9 or 10 interviews or a million different steps on kind of the employer's side of things. What advice would you give to someone maybe that is being faced with a company that either ghosts them, doesn't get back to them after maybe multiple interviews, or is asking them to jump through like 9 or 10 different hoops?
Okay, so the first thing is, and we recommend this to all of our clients, when you get involved in an interview, you're going to ask 3 questions. Number one, what's the salary range of this position? Women tend to not be aggressive about salary. They'll go through 6 interviews and find out it pays $40,000 less than they're worth. So it's absolutely acceptable and really suggested that the first thing you say is, what's the range for this position? The second thing that you want to say is, what does this interview process look like? If they say, it's a virtual interview, an in-person interview, and an in-person interview with the hiring manager, you're all in. 3 seems to be a reasonable amount, right? But if they say you're going to meet with 6 people, you're going to have a panel, we're going to have you do an assignment, there's 4 more interviews after that, and blah, 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 you're like, no. You want to sort of establish these things up front. What is the expectation? Because a lot of times when you get into these really incredibly lengthy interview processes, there's a couple of things at play. Number one, they're using you for ideas. We see it happen all the time. They never end up hiring anyone. Number two, they've got somebody really wishy-washy, or they haven't really been given the authority or empowerment to make a decision on hiring, and there's all these people involved, and then they need to come to a consensus. Put 10 people in a room together and try to get them all to say yes to something, it's almost impossible. So it's like an uphill battle and not likely to happen. And then the third thing is that you want to say, and you want to ask up front, what is your timeline? If they say we're looking to get someone into this role, fairly quickly, that's a go for me. We're looking to get someone in this role in the next month, also a go for me. We're looking to get someone in. It's October. We're looking for someone to start in February. So for me, that's a no. This isn't urgent. This job is unfilled. Somewhere along the way, someone in finance, someone in operations, someone in budgeting is going to say, look, we've operated all these months without somebody in this role. We don't really need to spend money on this job. And then you find yourself in a process that nothing ever gets done. So it's okay to set expectations from the very beginning. That's the first part of your question. The second part of your question is sort of a tried and true email that we've crafted through the years, which sounds sort of, it's going to sound funny and also very aggressive, and it makes people uncomfortable. If you've been through an interview process and you've got 4 or 5 interviews for the same position under your belt and you haven't heard from anybody, you sent a message to the recruiter, you sent a text to the hiring manager, no one is getting back to you, here's what you're going to do. It's got a 97% response rate by the end of the day. So pick a day of the week. Typically for me, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because people aren't paying attention on Mondays. They're overwhelmed. Friday, they already have one foot out the door. Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday morning, you're going to send this email. Hello, Jane. I have been through 4 interviews for this opportunity. I was supposed to hear back from someone 2 weeks ago. I'm not hearing back from anyone. My emails, texts, phone calls are being ignored. If I do not hear back from you by the end of the business today with the next steps in this process, please remove my candidacy from this position. Thank you so much. I've appreciated your time. I've enjoyed getting to know all of you. Sincerely, blah, blah, blah. Here's why that works. First of all, recruiters are always deferring to the owner of this role. They're not getting back to me. They're on vacation. They're dragging their feet. I have nothing new to say. So people don't like to deliver bad news, or they don't want to deliver no news, so they ignore you. The second thing is no one likes to be called out. Plus, we're all like FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. We don't want this candidate to remove themselves. We don't want them to take themselves out of contention, because we have a lot of time and effort and interest, in what has happened here. So that's why it has a 97% response rate. So do that. If you get ghosted and you can't get through to anybody, issue an ultimatum. They're either going to say, okay, we're not picking you, or they're going to say, we're so sorry about the delay. The CEO is on vacation. The HR person is out on maternity leave. We expect to have a response back within 2 weeks or whatever. You'll get some sort of response.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for a lot of people, though, hearing that, probably that feels like a scary email to send. But to your point, I think it is, setting expectations, and then at least kind of one way or the other whether you're moving forward or not with this
The
company.
whole thing really is to set expectations at the beginning. So when you ask the right questions, and I also advise people when you're in an interview process and you're wrapping up at the end of your great interview, you guys had a great conversation, yada, 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 say to them, who will be my contact throughout this process? What does that do? That sets an expectation. You're someone who is serious. Second thing is, I'm interviewing with other companies. There's a lot of really great and interesting opportunities out there. Can you tell me the timeline for hiring? Number 2, sets expectations. You're someone who is in demand. That makes you more desirable. There's a lot of things you can do with these questions at the end that positions you as someone who is in demand. And you know what happens when something is in demand? It makes me want you, right? If you
Hmm.
go to TJ Maxx and you see a purse that is the most beautiful purse you've ever seen, but then you pick it up and you look at the price tag and it's $19.99, all of a sudden you don't want that purse anymore. But if you go and you see this phenomenal purse and it's the best purse you've ever seen and it's $129 and there's only one left, you're grabbing it, you're buying it. So it's really about perception. So make sure you understand what sort of perception you're leaving behind.
I love that, and some great tips there on things people can do even before they leave the interview, so that they maybe hopefully aren't caught up in getting ghosted or not hearing back from the recruiter or the hiring manager.
And always send a thank you note. It can be a quick email. It should not be chat GPT generated. It should be something genuine. Have a laugh about something you shared in the interview, or you want to. People hire people they like. That's
Yeah.
the bottom line. If you're in an interview process with 6 other people, guess what? You're all qualified. People hire people they like. They hire people that feel like they're going to be a good fit into their culture, that they're going to get along with the team. So you want to be all of those things in the interview process, not just the best candidate in terms of skills and experience, but the best candidate that feels like a fit.
Amazing. I love that. Okay, you have a new book that just came out
I have a book that came out last year. It is
last
called
year.
Career Confidence. Yes, no BS stories for finding your power. I'm a no BS kind of gal. A lot of it is the backstory of Storyline and people that we've met along the way. Storyline's been around for 25 years. We've worked with about 400,000 people. During the
Wow.
early days, it was just me. I interviewed everyone. I wrote all the resumes, and then of course, as the years have gone by, we've gotten more and more staff. But I can tell you stories all day long about people's lives and the interesting folks that we've met, and a lot of those are in the book. And careers can take these phenomenal roller coastery, twisty, turny turns, on a dime, just based on someone that you've met, an opportunity that you pursued that maybe you didn't think you should. It's amazing what can happen, when you open yourself up to the possibilities.
Oh, I love that. And I think, one thing we've touched on a couple of times today in our chat is just how important making those relationships actually are, whether it's getting a referral into that company or, sending a personalized note at the end of an interview. I think, to your point, people hire people that they like. And I think that in an age of, so much AI and so much automation and maybe humans not always looking at all of the resumes, I think that is such a very important thing to come back to is making those meaningful connections.
Absolutely, and being your genuine self. It's never a mistake to be who you are.
Yeah, I love that. What would be, last question, one piece of advice that you would leave listeners or viewers with if they are maybe struggling with where they're at in their career? They feel like they need to make a change. Maybe they aren't happy with their organization or they feel like they're underpaid.
There's no one recipe for success in life. This is going to be more philosophical than I
I love
normally
it.
would be. Look at what you like, what jazzes you up. We spend more time at work than we do anywhere else. So when you put that into perspective, what do you love? What kind of environment? Do you love working with people? Do you hate working with people? Do you love numbers? Do you hate numbers? Do you love being in sales? Do you hate being in sales? Ask yourself the question about what makes you happy. I will give you a quick little example. Years and years and years ago, we had a client come to us. He was an account executive, a very senior level account executive, a global account executive to be exact, with a technology company. He had been in tech for a long time, about 15, 18 years. When he came, he said he was over tech. He was tired of selling it. It's the same people, it's the same companies, it's the same call schedule, yada, yada, yada. So when I said to him, what makes you happy? He couldn't tell me one thing. He was like, well, I get a paycheck. I take care of my family. I do, men aren't thinking about happiness. I go, well, yeah, well, what makes you happy? I mean, like, what's the last time you did something that you said this was really fun? Well, both of his boys raced motocross. That's what he did on the weekends.
Okay.
He loved hooking their dirt bikes up to the trailer and going to these different parks and these different events and watching I think they were like 15 and 17 at the time. And I said, have you ever thought of doing anything in the motocross industry? And he was like, well, no, that's not my background. And he was like very jaded by the whole thing. I go, you're in sales basically, and you're a relationship builder, and you can really build relationships in any industry because, that's what sales is. So anyway, to make a long story short, we did his resume. We sent him on his merry way. 4 months later, he calls me on the phone. He said, I shit you not. Guess what my new job is? And I said, what is it? And he said, I am the new North American account representative for Ducati, the Italian motorcycle manufacturer.
Oh, wow.
So when you think of things, it's not going to always be an exact correlation. So if you love to cook, you're not going to go write a cookbook and make $1 billion, right? But maybe there's something in that industry. So if what makes you happy in your personal life can often also make you very happy in your work life. So don't be afraid to explore things that you never thought of before, because weird stuff happens all the time.
I love that. And it's like, just because you have been in the accounting industry or the sales industry in a specific area, whether that's medical, sales, or maybe you're a tax specialist, doesn't mean there isn't a tax specialist that can be hired at a travel company if you love traveling the
Correct.
world, right? Like there's
Yes.
those roles in every type of industry. So I think that's such a great exercise that people can do.
Absolutely.
Okay, tell us where people can find you if they want to connect with you.
So you can find me on LinkedIn. My real name is Roberta. So I have to go by Roberta on LinkedIn because you have to be a verified account, you have to go by your legal name, but everybody calls me Robyn, Robynn. You can search either Roberta Storey or Robynn Storey on LinkedIn. You can follow me on there. I have an open profile. You can direct message me if you need help with your resume, if you need a career coach, if you need just some guidance and some direction. We've got a solution for all of those things. And then you can find us, of course, on the internet at www.storylineresumes.com, and that's story with an E. It's a play on my last name.
I love it. And I have to say, I am a big, big fan of your LinkedIn posts. I find them hilarious, and I love how no BS you are when you're writing them. So everyone definitely needs to give you a follow on there.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. It was so lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining us. And we'll make sure that the link to all of your socials and your book are available in the description for this episode below.
Sounds amazing.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of The Pink Tax, and I will see you next week. And that's a wrap on this week's episode of The Pink Tax. Thank you for joining me on the front lines of financial fairness. Remember, understanding the cost of being a woman is just the start. Now it's time to demand your worth and build your wealth. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a step in dismantling systemic inequality and securing your financial future. If this episode sparked a fire in you, take a screenshot, tag us on social media, and share it with a friend who needs to join the movement. Until next time, keep your wallet guarded, your eyes open, and let's keep fighting for a world where pink is just a color, not a tax bracket.